It all began on a cold Monday morning, when the smell of roasted coffee filled the sleek glass halls of Hartman Enterprises. The city buzzed outside like any other day, but inside that towering corporate giant, something was brewing, something beyond deadlines, spreadsheets, and boardroom deals. Damien Hartman, 31 CEO, ruthless, brilliant, and every magazine's most eligible bachelor for the past 5 years straight. He had it all: money, looks, charm, and a cold stare that could silence a room full of seasoned executives. But what no one really knew, or dared to ask, was why a man like him was still single. People speculated: too busy, too picky, maybe heartbroken in the past. Truth, though, was simpler and far more complicated. Marriage, to Damien, wasn't just a personal choice. It was a trap, a deal, a leverage card in a world where emotions were often liabilities. He didn't believe in fairy tales, he believed in control. That is, until his grandmother, Margaret Hartman, the family matriarch, with a steely resolve and a heart set on tradition, decided it was time for him to settle down. At her 80th birthday party, right in front of friends, family, and half the corporate world, she dropped the bomb: if Damien isn't engaged by the end of the month, I'll be stepping down from the board and transferring my voting rights to your cousin Patrick. Gasps. Champagne glasses froze mid-air, and Damien, he simply smiled, a controlled, calculated smile. He never let the world see him panic, but deep inside, he knew he had no intention of marrying. Not now, not like this. So what was a desperate, image-conscious CEO to do? Create the illusion of love. A fake fiancé, just long enough to outsmart the old woman, secure the board's confidence, and then disappear the whole thing like last quarter's losses. Enter Layla Monroe. 20-6, marketing assistant. Quiet, often overlooked. She blended in so well at work that most people thought she was new, even though she'd been around for 3 years. Her clothes were modest, her hair always tied up in a simple bun, and her voice barely rose above a whisper. Care during meetings. But she was sharp, smarter than most in the room. She saw patterns, understood people, and had dreams way bigger than her modest paycheck could handle. And yet, she never expected her life to collide with Damien's in such an outrageous way. It started as a joke. Damien's assistant, frustrated after a dozen failed interviews with hired actresses, joked about grabbing someone right from the office, someone forgettable. Damien paused, looked around, and his eyes landed on Layla. She was walking down the corridor, holding a stack of reports, head slightly down, her expression unreadable. Her, he said. Bring her in. The offer was absurd. A ridiculous amount of money to play girlfriend for 2 weeks. Designer clothes, a penthouse suite, even a personal stylist. All she had to do was smile, hold his hand, and nod at dinner conversations. Layla thought he was joking. He wasn't, and before she could overthink it, she found herself saying yes. Maybe it was the money, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe, just maybe, she wanted to prove she could be seen. The transformation began almost immediately. Stylists fluttered around her like bees, discarding every inch of her old wardrobe. Her unruly curls were treated, styled, and finally set free from their daily prison of tight buns. Her face, once hidden behind oversized glasses and minimal makeup, now lit up with soft tones and confidence. She stood taller, spoke clearer, and when Damien saw her after the makeover, for a moment, just a moment, he forgot this was all pretend. She was stunning. Not just because of the makeover, but because of the way she carried herself. There was something new in her eyes. Fire, presence. But Damien, ever the strategist, snapped back. This was a business deal. Nothing more. Still, the first public event changed everything. They arrived at the gala, all eyes on them. Damien in his tailored suit, Layla in a crimson evening gown that hugged her perfectly. Whispers echoed through the hall. Is that really her? She's gorgeous. He's finally in love. Margaret Hartman watched closely. Damien played the part. Layla followed the script, but, somewhere between the champagne toasts and polite conversations, the lines started to blur. She wasn't just acting anymore. He wasn't just pretending. Behind closed doors, things got complicated. Damien started to notice the little things, how quaint she hummed while reading reports, how she challenged him when no one else dared, how she made his sterile penthouse feel like a home. Code. And Layla, she began to see the man behind the cold exterior. The loneliness, the pressure, the cracks he hid so well from the world. But neither of them admitted it. And just when it seemed like the act was working, the tension exploded. One night, after a long dinner with Damien's board members, Layla confronted him. Why me? She asked. Out of everyone, why did you choose me to be your fake girlfriend? Damien paused. Looked at her. Because you were the one person who wouldn't fall for me. But he was wrong. Layla had fallen in. She wasn't sure how to get back up. What neither of them knew was that Patrick, Damien's scheming cousin, was watching closely, and he had plans of his own to expose the entire charade. One misstep, one wrong photo, and everything could come crashing down. Layla's job, Damien's reputation, their growing connection. As the days passed, what began as a fake romance turned into late-night conversations, accidental glances, and moments that felt too real to be scripted. Damien found himself wanting to protect her, to hold her, to tell her everything he never said to anyone else. But the deadline loomed. The engagement party was set, and the truth was just one scandal away. So the question remained, when the act was over, would there be anything real left between them? Cajun. And on the night of the engagement party, as Layla stood in front of the mirror, wearing a ring that wasn't hers and a smile she no longer believed in, she asked herself the same question, because somewhere along the way, playing girlfriend had become the most dangerous role she'd ever taken. And Damien, he was about to realize that losing control might be the only way to find what he'd been missing all along. But before either of them could take that leap, a secret was about to be revealed. One that would change everything, and that's where the real story begins. The air at the engagement party felt too heavy, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. Layla stood near the grand staircase of Damien's family estate, surrounded by chandeliers, polished marble, and people dressed like royalty. Music played softly in the background, and cameras flashed, as if they were already married. She smiled, held Damien's hand when required, and nodded at all the congratulations, but her heart wasn't in it. Somewhere deep down, a storm was brewing. Damien, too, looked composed but distant. His usual confident air was present, but Layla could feel the difference. He wasn't looking at her the same way anymore. His gaze lingered longer, and his touch wasn't part of the act anymore. It felt ... real. And that was dangerous. Because they both knew this wasn't supposed to be real. But tonight, something felt off. Damien's cousin, Patrick, had been acting strange. He greeted Layla with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He made comments that felt like veiled threats. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he said softly while refilling her champagne. She had smiled, pretending not to hear the hidden meaning. But her instincts were alert. Something was coming. Earlier that day, Damien had received an anonymous message. No name, just a screenshot. It was from an old company email, showing Layla's employee profile with her original look glasses, oversized sweaters, hair tied back. And underneath, the caption read, "This is the woman you're marrying." Damien stared at the image for a long time, the words echoing in his mind. Whoever sent it wanted to remind him of who Layla used to be, as if that version wasn't good enough, as if beauty was her only value now. But Damien didn't delete the message. He saved it. Not to confront Layla, but because it made him realize how much she had changed. Not just on the outside. Layla had grown. She was stronger, bolder, and she carried herself with the kind of grace that couldn't be taught. Still, the timing of the message wasn't a coincidence. Someone wanted to shake things up, and he had a strong feeling it was Patrick. Meanwhile, Layla began to notice cracks in the story they had built. The staff at the Hartman mansion started whispering when she passed. Some looked at her with pity, others with skepticism. Rumors were spreading. Damien hadn't said a word, but she could feel the tension between them, as if both were walking on a tightrope. One afternoon, 2 days after the party, Layla found an envelope slipped under her door at the penthouse. No name, just a photo. Her and Damien, from one of their first public appearances together. On the back, it read, "Does he love you, or does he just need you?" Layla's hands shook. She felt like she was being watched, followed, and worse, manipulated. She tried to push the thoughts away, but they lingered. What if this had all gone too far? What if Damien was only keeping her around because the act wasn't complete yet? She wanted to ask him, to scream, to demand the truth, but every time she looked into his eyes, she saw a man fighting his own battle. What Layla didn't know was that Damien had started falling for her long before the makeover. It wasn't about her dress or hair or the way she turned heads at events. It was the way she spoke her mind, even when afraid. The way she challenged him in meetings. Didn't laugh at his jokes just because he was the boss. And the way she looked at him like he was just a man. Not a title. But Damien couldn't say that. Not yet. He was too used to building walls, and letting someone in meant becoming vulnerable. For a man like him, vulnerability was a risk he had never taken. Until now, the pressure grew. Margaret Hartman, his grandmother, had started asking questions. "I want to speak to Layla alone," she said one evening after dinner. Damien hesitated but agreed. Layla sat across from the old woman, her hands folded tightly. Margaret stared at her unblinking. "You're not like the others," she said eventually. You don't want anything that makes you dangerous. Layla was confused. Dangerous, yes, Margaret nodded. Because people like you don't play the game. You don't want power, you don't want the company, and that means you can't be bought. Tet frightens men like Damien, and it frightens me. Layla didn't know what to say. She felt like she was being tested, but she didn't understand the rules. Margaret stood up, walked over, and looked down at her. Don't break his heart, she whispered. Because if you do, you won't just be losing him, you'll be losing everything. That night, Layla sat alone on the balcony, replaying the conversation. Did Damien even have a heart to break? Or was she already too far in? Back at work, things started changing. Some coworkers began treating Layla differently. A few whispered behind her back. Some were friendly, but others grew cold. Layla's best friend in the department, Sophia, warned her, "Watch your back. Patrick's been digging. He's trying to prove this whole engagement is fake." Layla nodded. She knew. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. When it did, she'd be the one blamed. Then came the charity auction. Another public appearance. Another opportunity for the illusion to hold. Layla wore a sapphire gown. Damien stood by her side. The cameras loved them. But halfway through, the night. As the bidding continued, Patrick took the stage. "I have a surprise item," he said, grinning. "Private photo collection of the soon-to-be Mr. and Mrs. Hartman." Never before seen moments. Damien stiffened. Layla froze. On the big screen behind Patrick, images began to flash. Some were harmless candid shots from events, walks through the park. But then came one from weeks ago, Law sitting alone on the rooftop of the Hartman building, without makeup, staring at the city skyline. Not part of the act. Not staged, just real. She doesn't even know she's being watched. Patrick laughed. "Isn't love grand?" The room went silent. Damien stepped forward, eyes blazing. "That's enough," he said coldly. "Shut it off." Patrick smirked. "Touchy, cousin." But Damien didn't back down. He turned to the crowd. "My fiancé doesn't deserve this. None of you do. This was a private moment. And if anyone in this room thinks I'd marry for business or show, you don't know me at all." He took Layla's hand and led her out of the ballroom. Outside, in the cold night air, Layla pulled away. "Why didn't you tell me you were being blackmailed? That someone was spying on us?" "I didn't want you to worry," he said. "I'm already in this." "I deserve the truth," she said, tears in her eyes. Damien looked down. "I'm falling for you, Layla. That wasn't part of the plan. I didn't expect it. I didn't want it. But I can't pretend anymore." Layla's breath caught. "But you still haven't told me," she whispered. "Is any of this real?" Damien stepped closer. "More real than anything I've ever had." But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A message. One line, "You need to see this." She opened the file. It was a signed contract, one she had never seen, between Damien's assistant and a private investigator. The date was before the makeover. Before the parties. Before it all. Layla looked up at Damien, betrayed. "Did you plan this from the beginning? Every single move?" Damien stepped back, confused. What are you talking about? She showed him the screen. His face dropped. I never approved that. But someone in your team did. Before I even agreed. And just like that, the walls she had slowly allowed to fall came crashing down. Was I ever a choice? She asked. Damien had no answer. And now, the truth threatened to destroy everything they had built. Because even love, once mixed with lies, becomes hard to believe. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, a video surfaced. One that would make headlines. And this time, there would be no way to pretend. The video dropped like a bomb the next morning. It started circulating in the company group chats, news sites, and even trending on social media. Layla woke up to dozens of messages and missed calls. Her heart pounded as she opened the video. It was grainy, clearly taken from a hidden angle. But there was no mistaking who was in it. Her and Damien, sitting in a dimly lit restaurant a week before the engagement party. Their conversation played out, word for word, captured like a scene from a drama. I'll play the part, Layla had said, her voice calm but uncertain. But I won't lie to myself. And Damien's voice followed, quiet and deliberate. Pre-pet. It's just a few weeks. Nothing has to be real. The video stopped there. Cropped perfectly to paint the worst picture. Story exploded. CEO caught faking engagement. Romance for publicity. Hartman love hoax exposed. The media had a field day. Stockholders panicked. Margaret Hartman was flooded with calls from angry board members. Layla couldn't step outside without being photographed or insulted. And Damien disappeared. For 2 days, Layla heard nothing from him. Not a message. Not a call. Only silence. She packed her bags and left the penthouse, returning to her small apartment across town. The glitz was gone. So was the illusion. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself, not because of the makeover, but because of the emotional storm she had lived through. She had started this journey as someone invisible, hired to play pretend. But now, she had been seen, judged, and dragged into the spotlight. And what hurt most wasn't the scandal or the headlines. It was that, in the end, Damien didn't fight for her. Until he did. On the third morning, Layla heard a knock. She opened the door to find Damien standing there, drenched from the rain, holding a small box and looking nothing like the polished CEO the world knew. Chaos's eyes were tired, his voice hoarse. I didn't approve that contract, he said. And I didn't know about the video until you saw it. Patrick set it up. I have proof. He stepped inside and handed her a USB drive. On it, messages between Patrick and a private investigator, plans, payments, timelines. It was all there. The smear campaign, the framing, the setup. Damien had been trying to fix it behind the scenes, gathering evidence before coming to her. But time had run out too quickly. Layla stood still, holding the drive. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid I'd already lost you. She looked at him, trying to read between the words. He wasn't perfect. Far from it. But for the first time, he wasn't hiding behind strategy or silence. He was just a man, standing in front of her, asking for a second chance. "And what now?" she asked. He opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring, but a key to my home. No lies. No fake titles. Just me and you. If you still want any part, tear, of this crazy story. Layla laughed through the tears. Not because it was funny, but because it felt like something out of a movie. A script they'd rewritten 100 times in their heads. But this time, there was no acting, no pretending. It was messy and real. They didn't make a grand announcement. They didn't go back to the old roles. Layla resigned from the company quietly. She needed space to figure out who she was without the shadow of being the CEO's fake girlfriend. Damien respected that. He stepped down from the public spotlight for a while, focusing on rebuilding trust with his family, his board, and most of all, with her. Patrick was removed from the company board after the evidence surfaced. The media story shifted once the truth came out, though the damage had already been done. But sometimes, from the mess, something honest can grow. Weeks later, Layla started her own creative agency, helping small businesses build real connections with real stories. Damien became her first investor, not because of guilt, but because he believed in her vision. He stopped trying to control everything and started listening more. They didn't label their relationship right away. They just started fresh. What began as a lie ended in the most unexpected truth, that sometimes love doesn't arrive in grand declarations or perfect timing. Sometimes it sneaks in through awkward silences, hard conversations, and painful lessons. And Layla, she wasn't the same woman Damien picked for a fake relationship. She had found her voice, her place, her power. And Damien, well, he finally learned that losing control wasn't the end of the world. It was the beginning of something real. And that's how a rented romance turned into a love story no one saw coming.